how do things work process wise? What do you do? What do you look at? How do you invest? How do you buy? How do you start a project with the current very quick time frame? So the first thing I want to talk about is hi friends, it's Scott back. We're gonna do a quick podcast, just a couple minutes on strategy for moving forward with investing in renewables today, as of July 2nd, 2025, considering where we are with the current Senate drafted legislation. So if you look at that video, there's a lot of good detail in it. I recommend that folks go to that video and take a look at the full podcast from today, July 2nd. I'm going to run through a couple of things real quick. And again, this will probably present a good opportunity to ask questions and have comments, and I will look forward to taking them. And I think this is also a good topic for future Q&A sessions, because I think we are going to get into some of these things and have a good dialogue over the next couple of weeks of exactly that. How do things work process wise? What do you do? What do you look at? How do you invest? How do you buy? How do you start a project with the current very quick time frame? So the first thing I want to talk about is, if the language remains the same in the Senate bill and it goes to the president's desk in its current form or some version of it, as long as it has this begin construction window and it lasts for the year from the time that the legislation is passed and signed into law until the last possible moment, to 364 days from now, or from whenever the bill is signed, whatever date that is in July or August or whenever, then my first order of business would be begin construction. That's the language. The key is do something that satisfies that language. So whatever the definition of begin construction is under the Inflation Reduction Act, if some of the background definitions, and language remain, then just go to that. Whatever begin construction means, use the definition and do as much as you can between now and a year from now. That will preserve the 30% tax credit. The whole goal is preserving as much of the tax credit as you can. The larger scale the projects are, the more benefit there is, and the more opportunity there is to save. One item is that is relevant is what does that mean to begin construction? So obviously, any modifications to that language that would be tied in to any language that exists currently under the Inflation Reduction Act, we're going to have to melt together and be able to come up with what does that mean, so that we satisfy that. That's the most critical piece. So begin construction as soon as you can, whatever that entails, whether that's buying hardware or whether that's putting a shovel in the ground and doing some kind of pre-development work on a site, anything like that. Whatever would satisfy that is all you have to do. And I've seen projects where we've done that. Put a shovel in the ground. That was the extent of begin construction. As long as there isn't a monetary threshold that we have to meet, like you have to buy, so much of a percentage for that to be considered beginning construction. So that's the first order of business. The second is really kind of part of the first, and I could have switched this around as well, but move quickly. Move quickly to pre-develop the projects. I think one of the things we did in an earlier podcast that Matthew and I are going to get back to is the process. How do these projects get built? And what is the process that you go through? I don't think there's anything more important, going forward than describing what the process looks like, so that most of you, if you're, in the midst of thinking about doing a project for your corporation or your business, what have you, how do you do that? And so moving quickly in the pre-development stages, which is all the planning. What's the cost-benefit analysis? What land do you use? Or if you're putting a solar facility, say on a roof, what does that look like? What are the options that you have? What if you're doing a wind development project? Same thing is, what are you looking at in terms of how to develop the project, the land for that project, or how much time do you need to buy the hardware in order to actually build that project at some point and construct it in the future? So getting all of that pre-development work done as quickly as you can, I urge you to consider doing that. I think making decisions now, in this month of July, or even into the next quarter is going to be very, very critical in terms of being able to shore up enough time on the back end of the end of this year and into next year and then the end and the middle of next year, when that technically that 30% tax credit would end at the end of the 1 year mark from signature of the bill. Then you have some time to obviously complete the project. But, that 1 year, that 12 months goes very fast. And if you haven't taken, enough steps to do all of the pre-development work as quickly as you can, all of the planning, all of the specs, all of the engineering, all the diagrams, all the work that has to go into it, all the design, and then ultimately some of the pre-construction, this is the time to do it. And so things that were normally in the schedule and in my process PowerPoint that we started with the first segment, that's critical. The third thing is, if you can, considering whatever the tariff rates are, whatever benefits you in terms of the timing of what the tariffs are, a lot of this will depend on what happens in the next 7 days on July 9th. If the president and this administration, if they move to increase the tariffs in all of the countries that have not cut a trade deal, and that includes China and other places where hardware comes in from overseas, then that could blow up the cost of importing hardware. So the idea of pay attention to where the tariffs go and what language comes out of that and what numbers result, because the timing of purchasing hardware is relevant not just for the next week, which I'm sure most folks watching this video, if you watch it in the next 7 days, you still can't probably react in time. But looking at what the underlying cost of the hardware is, consider buying as much of the solar hardware as you can up front. If there's an ability to save money, and that's, again, a cost-benefit analysis depending on the timing of the projects and what kind of hardware your developer is looking at. If you're a customer and, if you're a developer looking to buy hardware, my take is the same. If you're a developer, go out and buy more panels than you need. Do it now before tariff numbers would potentially increase. Do it now when projects are going to start to just fly in, because folks are going to want to do projects within the next 12 months, at least start them. So I think it's going to be an incredibly quick rush to build and rush to construction. And so that's a good thing for our industry. It will kick off a huge wave of opportunities into the next 2.5 years. And so even if that happens, that will be such a great push into 2028, 2029, and ultimately at 2028, we're into another administration. And by that time, a lot of this, might be moot. We might have another round of opportunities that develop as a result of new legislation, after the end of this administration. So anything is possible. But getting started, certainly on the hardware, and at least investing in the hardware now in anticipation of doing that project is really important. And the final thing I'll say is, that's sort of, my last point is, get the best of the best. Find the best consulting. The stuff that I do, really important to have the best support team that you can get to do these projects and do them well and do them within the time frame that they're allotted based on the timing of these tax credits and other deadlines. Figure out who you need. What kind of consulting do you need? What kind of development team do you need? What kind of construction team do you need? Find the best of the best for your project in your neck of the country. Find the best of what you can find and get started as quickly as you can. And I think those would be the advice. That would be the same advice I would give if there wasn't such a push on the phase out of the tax credits. But I think it just sort of enhances and lends a lot of credence to the idea that we've had all along, which is buy good hardware, find good development companies that know what they're doing. This is the same advice I've given from the start. It's just do it in a very, very deliberate way and don't waste time in the process. Thanks very much. I appreciate you listening. Have a great day, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.